I like chickens, so I'll make a game about a chicken.
Okay, so here's our start area. We have a spawn point with the chicken over here, and just in front of it there will be some food so that the player can see the food and interact with it immediately, see how that works. There's a tree stump over here with some food at the top, so the player also learns how to jump. And the chicken coop here, maybe a little chicken friend inside? I don't know, we'll see. And this entire area is fenced off. There's a gate over here that the chicken has to go through. And then on the outside of that, some stacks of boxes with some more food on top. And here's a tree, so maybe have a apple on it that the chicken can ram the tree and the apple falls down. I'll see if I get to that. And then our next set of obstacles comes in form of this river here with a log that the chicken can jump on to cross it with some food on top of it to also indicate that, yeah, you need to go here. And maybe also a stone on this side that the chicken can jump on and then jump to the other side as well. And the next thing is a road, because of course a game about a chicken needs a road for it to cross. And I'll add some cars in there, and that's gonna be it. That's gonna be the entire game.
The model in the end looked fine, but I wasn't smart about the mesh geometry. Some faces were massive and I was lacking geometry around the places that would bend when animated, and this is perfect for producing animations with lots of pointy shapes and weird angles. So here I am adding more geometry, especially around the bendy areas like the neck. My brain was completely melted at the end of all of this, adding more geometry and making the rectangles into triangles, which also helps make the animation smoother. It's harder than I thought. And now we go to animating this beautiful chicken. But first we need to do some weight painting. Using Blender's automatic weights feature, you can get an excellent starting point, but then I thought to make it better by doing some manual weight painting without actually knowing how any of this works. It took some time to get a feel for locating the actual points you need to brush over to have the painting take effect, and I found myself furiously wiggling the mouse in hopes to hit those points, only to then undo it because I've accidentally painted over other bits of it that I did not intend. Just following my intuition and what made sense to me considering the bone structure I ended up with, as can be seen, the end result turned out horribly bad. Yeah, that checks out. Well, let me then revert back to the Blender's automatic painting, with only a few changes around the feet and continue with the run animation. After a long time spent fiddling with the timings and getting the movements to align, we end up with this. It's alright. Now we have the model and the animations, but the chicken looks pretty bland, so let's do some quick coloring using Infansia's color palette and the style I learned from his videos, which is to select the vertices that make up the faces you want to color and then setting the UVs of those to a single point using S then 0 shortcut in Blender. Then we'll import the color chicken model into the Godot project. And this looks like the chicken is going to a Met Gala. A bit too fancy for the theme of the game. I think that what happened here is when I imported the color palette material, Godot compressed the texture image by default, and this compression resulted in those wonky colors. After fixing that, we end up with this. Now to create some more props in Blender. We need a wooden fence first. Here I thought to create a single model with 2 fence posts and 2 planks between them. My logic was that it would make it just a little easier later to place these in Godot, and I think that was a reasonable decision, although it did make it tricky to connect the 2 ends of the fence because the fence posts would overlap, which wouldn't look great, but at the scale and the distance to the camera, it's not really a worry. The alternative was to create a separate scene in Godot with just the fence post, and then a separate scene with just the woods in between, the planks in between. But I thought that's just going to be too much work to place in the game world later. Next up is a box. This one is simple enough. It's just a wooden box. And now a tree stump. But I already had a model of this, so I just did some small changes and colored it in. And same for the tree. I also had this model already, so I only did some small changes to add the roots. In hindsight, I did go a bit overboard with those. By the way, all of these props need collision shapes in Godot as well, so that the chicken just can't walk through them. Instead of adding them myself, I've used this feature from Godot that generates a shape from the mesh on import, and if the mesh name has a -col for collision in the name, it's not the most performant approach, but it's good enough. Now here I would show you the modeling of the gate as well, but I forgot to click record. Next up, making the gate open when the chicken pushes against them. So let's create a scene with the gate post and the gate itself, and then link them together with a hinge joint 3D. And let's see now what happens. Oh, nothing happens. Turns out that when using the character body 3D node in Godot, the node doesn't actually have physics, so you need to code all of that in and basically fake the gate being pushed. So I was thinking about creating a little area 3D around the gate itself, and when the chicken interacts with it or intersects it, then we'll just fake push the gate around. Okay, let's do that now then. Well, it's doing something. What if I jump on it? Something seems off. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, looks like it's working now. It's just that the force is probably too small. Wait, never mind. Okay, let's scale down the chicken to a more reasonable size and do some more changes. And it finally works. Wow, great. Moving on. Okay, now I want to set up the starting fenced area with the gate shown here. So let's put down all of those fences with the gate. And now we have a gate not working when it's flipped. I've also discovered that you can change the exported variables in the editor with the game running. This is a really nice feature to have during development. But why is the gate doing that now? Okay, at this point I just decided to delete the entire code for the fence gate. This is the code if you're interested, very simple in the end, but it took me long to reason about the basic vector functions and how to use them. It's been a long time since I did anything with vectors. Now that we finally got the gate out of the way, let's focus on our objective, the food. I've opted for a corn kernel as a food item, so we'll quickly model that in Blender. Now we need something to figure out when the chicken is actually close enough to the corn kernel, so that we can interact with it. And for that I went with a sort of a generic system that I can use in future projects as well, maybe. The system leverages the Godot signals to update on each player position change. Then when a player gets close enough, it sends another signal to mark the corn kernel node as an interactable. The interactable node code is super simple. It basically only has these two signals, one of them for when the interactable is close enough to the player, and one to actually trigger the interact function. And then there is this registry that contains all of the interactables and calculates the closest one on each player position change signal. Once I've connected all of that, we end up with this. Look how happy this chicken all dealt with. In the meantime, I've also created a model of a coop and put an NPC chicken inside of it for company. There is something weird happening with the camera here, but I'll deal with that later. At this point I figured that there's hardly going to be any challenge in this game with just the chicken jumping on obstacles and eating food. So I've decided to just make the entire game about crossing the increasingly more difficult roads to reach the finish. And yeah, no, this didn't make the game that much more better, but I have no idea what I'm doing anyway, so whatever. Let's model the road now and code a road generator of sorts, which instantiates the road segments we have into a straight road. Okay, we are generating the road. It's not going in exactly the direction that I wanted to, so let's fix that quickly. And now we got a more roady looking road. Cool. Now we need some cars to drive on this beautiful pristine roads that I've got. So I did some very rough low poly cars. There are plenty of tutorials on YouTube that you can check out to see how to do this in Blender. Not much more to say about this, to be honest. I've used the same color palette and style as all other models. Luckily I didn't need to animate the cars, and the tires not turning is not something a player can notice either. Here are all the very cool, very highly detailed cars that I've made. In reality, it's just one car that I've modified enough to pass off as 3 different cars, so that the whole road doesn't look too boring. The cars look very 1990s, and they're colored accordingly as well. The car spawner logic is just taking a list of all the car scenes and spawning them in a random order, moving them at a constant speed until the set distance is reached, and then they repeat. And then we end up with something looking like this. And finally, I've added that when the car hits the chicken flies into the air. Okay, so now we have some actual gameplay. But to really up the immersion, we need some sound. And not just any sound. Some really high quality premium chicken clucks for every occasion. And I could have gone to any number of websites with a bunch of assets on it and just downloaded some chicken noises, but hey, I thought I can make sound. I think I could sell a convincing chicken noise. I can only imagine what was going through the head of my neighbors if they heard any of this. But I don't mind, because this has been by far the most fun part of this entire project. So now I get to edit that with Audacity and cutting it up into bits that can actually be used in the game. Okay, time to finish the game world. Placing all of these fences has been a bit of a chore, and I could have possibly made a script that places them automatically in a line, but I figured I can just copy-paste them as well, since the distances between the roads are the same anyway. I've also added some more corn kernels in between the roads, which are a bit difficult to see here, but I mean to use these for the player to regain their health if they get hit by a car. Nothing complicated, the player will have like 3 health, meaning they can get hit by a car 3 times and each corn will regain them 1 health. All in all, I've added 5 roads in total, and I'll skip to the end where I also need to add the finish area. Just another fenced off segment. Since I spent so much time on getting the fence gate working, you can bet I will use it again. Wasn't quite sure what to do to trigger the endgame screen, so I just placed another coop here, and later I will add instructions to the player at the start of the game saying that they need to find their own coop, which is this one. What I was surprised to learn is that there is no way in Godot to specify where to spawn a node within a scene. Instead, the nodes always spawn at the world origin and you have to move them manually, which is quite annoying, to be honest. Especially when you have a large scene like this and you need to move the props far from the origin. So after a bit of searching on the internet, I found this handy add-on called Godot 3D Cursor that imitates the cursor feature from Blender. Neat! And then finally, I just needed to adjust the car spawner parameters to make sure that the cars don't overlap and that they get faster as you progress through the game. The last few things to add was just to make the chicken at the start, the NPC chicken, interactable so that it can tell the player to find their own coop as the objective of the game. I've also added a health bar at the bottom so you can see how much health you have left. And to add the win and failure state screens. You can retry or get a well done after reaching your own coop. At this point I am calling this game complete, from the perspective of what I wanted to do with it. And that was to simply build something from start to finish. This is only my second game ever, so it was never going to be any good. There are so many things that could have been added or could have been done better that it doesn't even make sense to talk about it because we'd be here for a very long time. Anyway, you can check out this game on itch.io. The link is in the description along with all of the other materials that I've used. And yeah, it's a game about a chicken. Thanks for watching.